Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast with Blaha. And today I'm having fat-free Greek yogurt, frozen cherries, and milled flax seeds. All right, let's talk about front squats, and let's talk about squats in general. This is one of these topics that when you bring up it, it's not just me, it's when any coach or expert brings it up, people get defensive and they get dug in with their ideas that squats are the best quad exercise ever, and they're just not. And I'm saying this as a power lifter who coaches plenty of people with really big squats. And you guys have seen me squat 600 pounds before. So I look at the science of all this, I look at the data, and the data just does not support the idea that for most people the squat is a great or a phenomenal quad exercise. And one of the things that we know is that the type of squat you do doesn't change that. Doesn't change it. But then every time you bring this up, one of the big arguments that you will see someone say every single time, well, what about weightlifters? Or they'll call them Olympic lifters. They're called weightlifters, guys. Learn the terminology. So what about weightlifters? They have really big quads and they do tons of front squatting. You know, that's kind of a funny correlation, and there's some problems with it. You set aside all the data. Here's the big issue. Number one, do all of them have jacked quads? You're telling me every Olympic lifter has jacked quads? Or are you telling me the ones who are medaling in the Olympics have jacked quads? Because there's a big difference. I've seen weightlifters who don't have particularly impressive quads. All right, we're going to go somewhere with this. Also, currently the strongest weightlifter on the face of the earth I've seen it written in interviews discussing his training that he doesn't front squat. So they all front squat? Are you sure? Strongest one doesn't. One winning golds right now in the heavyweights in the Olympics, he doesn't front squat. It's a common exercise in their sport. Let's put it that way. It's a very common supplemental lift. They don't all do it. They don't all have big quads. But here's the thing. The ones who do have really big quads from it, number one, you don't know that front squats are all they do for their quads. Because I've sure seen a lot of weightlifters doing single leg exercises, which I think we can make a better case for due to stimulus fatigue. You do more training volume and recover from it. That's one part. Another part of that, think of the fact that many of them are professional athletes. Their life is geared around being able to handle larger amounts of training. One of the biggest problems with squatting in general, whether it's front or back squatting, is it beats you up at higher volumes. It's harder to recover from. Right? That's why people need other supplemental lifts to build the muscles of the squat. And yes, those muscles are the same for a front squat, back squat, low bar squat, high bar. Same basic muscles. Because they can only handle so much volume of it. So how many weightlifters do other quad movements? A whole lot of them. Split squats being near the top of the list. They seem to do that just as much. Just as many weightlifters that I've known do split squats as do front squats. All right? But they have the recovery component. They can technically get away with more volume with squatting, therefore they can get more out of it from a hypertrophy perspective. Okay, we have that. What else? Genetics to pre-select to be good at a sport. Now, this is going to be a stretch for a lot of people, but guess what? Genetics and bone structure matter in sports. I know, crazy idea. What is one of the physical traits that you... Okay, guys, racing around outside at 2 a.m. That's why I have a sound room for most of my recording. It's done voiceovers and my Skype time for clients. But back over to their structure. They tend to have short femurs. Why? It helps them squat better. You get more out of the squat. Half the population doesn't have short femurs. Which means what? It's harder to get quad stimulation out of a squat of any type. And a front squat particularly, as you can't go ultra wide as easy on a front squat, right? So it's just a narrow stance. Longer leg lifters, people with ratios where their femur to torso ratio is different. They have slightly longer legs, not as long as torsos. Guess what? Squats don't hit their quads as hard of any type. People who are really good at weightlifting, again, meaning the Olympic lifting, tend to have shorter femurs, longer torsos. Is a general physical trait. Therefore, they get more out of squats. Their quads are going to grow better from squats than the rest of the population. What else? They're all genetic freaks. They're all extremely genetically gifted athletes, usually with a lot of fast twitch fibers, if they're making it to the Olympics in weightlifting. And I don't think we need to touch on the drug component, probably a factor. Whether you believe or understand that most Olympic athletes are on and cheat, we won't make a major point out of that one. Promise you that's a factor in their quads growing from it too, though. But even if you don't believe that, you have the other genetic components. Right? We have all of that. But some of them still don't have quads. Maybe their genetics, maybe their leg lengths. Okay. So here's the issue. This is a small subcategory of people. They get more out of squats for their quads than the rest of the population probably will, due to all those factors that we put in there. Then here's the issue. You come down to the physics. So that debunks the anecdote. Here's the other problem with that anecdote. It still doesn't prove that front squats build more quads than other types of squats. Doesn't prove it at all. It's a single anecdote. On top of that, weightlifters don't even have the biggest quads. There are other categories of competitors who have bigger quads than weightlifters. I think maybe bodybuilders. Bodybuilders who do more specific quad work. Yeah, we're going to deny this. And here's the problem at the end of the day. The anecdote is easy to debunk. The scientific literature is not. The scientific literature says all squats work the same muscles of the lower body in similar ratios if depth is matched. You know, you can't go deeper all of a sudden on a front squat. And when we say depth is matched, if we're talking about ratios of muscles grown, it doesn't seem to actually do a lot for the quads. It's the other muscles to get more when you go deeper. That's what the research shows. Adductors, and then glutes even more. Incidentally, glutes and adductors are the muscles that hypertrophy the most in the hypertrophy studies that looked at full squats, also called the Olympic squat, right? The glutes and the adductors grow more from it than the quads do in the studies that actually measure the growth plotted out over months, or people doing just squat-specific programs. See the issue here? Evidence doesn't support this idea, and it's a silly argument accordingly. Right? You don't debunk scientific evidence with smaller anecdote that can be easily taken apart. That doesn't work. Because when we study it in the lab, we find the opposite to be true. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.